from me, Barb. I thought yesterday was really good just to make sure that we sort of all felt like we were on the same page. So I appreciate the discussion and all of the input from our colleagues yesterday, and in terms of getting on the same page. And I do think the conversation today on how to implement will be very helpful. As we mentioned yesterday, this is the first time that CIPE's implementing this project with additional partners such as ABA and Search outside of Moldova. So I think when we have Elena join us to discuss, they're just a few months ahead of us, not that far ahead, but a few months. It'll be interesting to hear from her how she is working with ABA and how they interact together and how they approach things. But I wouldn't necessarily take that as the gold standard. Like I said, we're still learning our way with this. So we'll appreciate your thoughts and your ideas and your input in how you see this to get everything coordinated. So that's, I think, it for me, Kalea, for now at least.
Thank you, Barb. Oh. Thank you. If anyone else online wants to share, please feel free to do that. I'm just sharing my screen now. So you can start. Okay. Okay, so for everyone in the room and online, I think we'll be working off of this PowerPoint, so I hope everyone can see that. And yeah, I really appreciated all of the questions you all brought up yesterday about how we're going to be working together. As you know, we're 3 very different organizations who come to this project with very different experiences and different perspectives for how we should approach implementation. So today, I hope that we can clarify a lot of the questions and move forward with a plan. So this is kind of our agenda for the day, reviewing the wage structure and the org chart, and then talking about each of our organization's roles and the financial breakdown, and then talking through the decision-making processes and who's involved in that. And then Barb will speak a little bit about the learning agenda, which is a donor-driven, like US, like our donor GWE has several requirements for the learning products that we'll be producing out of this project. And then I believe Elena will be joining us. There was a bit of a mix up with the time difference, so I hope that she'll be able to join us. If not, we'll schedule a separate session with her to talk about gender-based violence and the CIPE ABA working relationship in Moldova, because it's also a wage program implemented by CIPE and ABA. So Search is not involved, but similar type of relationship. So I know that many of you, okay, I hope everyone can hear. I know many of you have seen this org chart before. Who has not seen this before? Raise your hand. Okay, everyone has seen it. Okay, so this is just a very quick summary of all of the different people and offices involved in this project. And I know everyone knows everything about this, but we can just quickly go over this is SGWE, our donor, and these are our points of contact, Regina and Sarah. These are the people who are always copied on all of the correspondence we have with the US Embassy and USAID staff in any country. And then from SGWE, the funding goes to Wage Global, which is housed at ABA Rowley. And the people at Wage Global at ABA Rowley are Emily, Muthoni, and Abby. So these are the people that are reviewing all of the reports that we write and submit. And they're the ones talking to GWE about the branding waiver, about the one-pager, about the blog, and all of those things that need to get GWE approval. So then we come down to the Wage Consortium, which is made up of 4 organizations, as you all know: ABA, CIPE, Search for Common Ground, and the Grameen Foundation. But the Grameen Foundation is not part of the Wage Central Asia program, but it is a member of the Wage Consortium. just so if you hear about that organization, you know what it is. And then we have the Commercial Law and Development Fund, Commercial Law and Development Program, it should be, at the US Department of Commerce that we are trying to, cooperate with throughout this project, but they're not part of the WAGE consortium. And then moving down to each implementing partner, each organization has both a DC team and a country-based team. As we know, so ABA is Ina, Lauren, and Haley, and then all of the country-based teams, and then CIPE is, this needs to be updated. Sorry, I haven't updated it. So the DC team, and then CIWE, which is the Center for Women's Economic Empowerment, led by Barb on the call, and then our country-based staff, and then search, here's Shabnam and Mirzagul. Yeah. Okay, okay, great. Okay, so I'll add them. Okay, cool. So I'll update this, but this lives on the Google Drive that we all work from. So in case you need to refer to it, it's there. Okay, any questions about this before we move on? Okay. So now I thought I would go through how we see each organization's role, and we can also have this be more of a discussion. So when we get to ABA and Search, feel free to like add to this, but this is mostly, it's coming out of like the design, the proposal, how we envisioned it. So as we all know, CIPE is the technical lead, and the reason why CIPE was included in this proposal, regardless of the fact that it's part of the WAGE consortium, is that we own the National Business Agenda project model and methodology. We have extensive experience working with business associations in Central Asia, and also building coalitions among women's organizations and just in general business organizations around the world. And so our role in the project is to deliver training sessions on the various topics in advocacy, policy analysis, and the business agenda. Guide the development of the business agendas and advocacy plans, lead the regional learning efforts. So that's the rapid needs assessment that we're doing, and all of the 2 conferences that we're planning to do under the project, and leading the donor relations components, reporting efforts. So that's like the quarterly report, monthly updates, financial reports, all of those things with input from both ABA and Search for your specific components. And then we're also the lead for the monitoring and evaluation with input from both of your organizations. So like in the monitoring and evaluation plan that we submitted for the proposal, there's certain outcomes that each organization is responsible for. So for example, Search is responsible for, I think it's 2.2, like the media one. So you would be giving us that data that you're collecting on like the number of public outreach campaigns conducted, and then we would make sure it fits into the rest of the report before we submit it. Barb, is there anything you want to add to CIPE's role or Estelle as well?
Nothing from me, Kalei. It might actually be interesting to go through each of the organizations and then have a discussion and make sure that we're on the same page and agree.
Speaker is on. Just a moment.
Maybe she's not talking right now.
No, she was talking. Barb, could you hear us? Can you hear us?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yeah, she's talking. Is your speakers unmuted?
Yeah, no. Yeah. Barb, so sorry. Please repeat.
That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, please go ahead.
Excellent. I was gonna, what I was saying, Kalei, is there's nothing for me just yet. It might be interesting to go through each organization and the role and how it's outlined in the proposal, and then just have a discussion to see if it aligns with reality and see if everyone agrees in terms of, the vision going forward.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
This is quite
Well, it's complicated. Yeah, no.
Thank you. This is quite the dance we need to do with this audio. Okay, so on to ABA. This is how it's written in the project design, and I'd be really interested, like Barb said, to hear if this fits with how you view your own role in the project. So ABA is the operational lead, meaning that ABA ROLI is the actual organization providing the sub-grants to CIPE and Search to do this project. So operational in that sense, and then also that ABA has offices or active presences in each target country. And so through those can provide operational support to CIPE. The reason for including ABA in the proposal, regardless of the fact that it's part of the consortium, was originally based on ABA's expertise and resources in gender and inclusion, gender-based violence, and do no harm. So if you look through the proposal, ABA is the lead on all of those components. Also, its experience engaging the government in Central Asia and also developing methodologies and conducting rule of law assessments, as well as supporting local reform and legal advocacy. So that was the hope for how ABA would, for like kind of the experience and expertise that ABA would bring to the project. And then in terms of the actual role in the project, as I mentioned, the training components on gender-based violence and gender, building partner capacity on reform response tracking systems in line with your legislative reform projects, and then providing small grants for them to actually do the reform response monitoring, leading the government relations, as well as providing input on legal analysis and policy advocacy based on ABA's experience in other programs. So that's kind of how we viewed ABA's role. And then I guess I'll just go over Search's role and then we can have a bit of a discussion. Okay. So then Search, core partner and media campaign lead. The reason why we included Search as the proposal is based on their experience conducting outreach campaigns, collaborative advocacy, and conflict-sensitive creative messaging. And in the project, their role will be is to support stakeholder engagement and creative messaging to reach men and other allies and institutions as champions for women's economic empowerment. And then when the steering committees come up with their advocacy plans, Search will help them incorporate engagement to allies such as men entrepreneurs and women's family members. And then, conducting the creative public outreach campaigns to, build the messaging around the national women's business agendas. And Mirza Gul raised a question yesterday about Search's role in terms of media campaigns versus media support for the project. So to clarify, the vision for Search's role is not media support, but media campaigns, so leading the media campaigns. And this brings me to the financial breakdown, which I think I'll just go through before we have a discussion. I went through the budget narrative for each of the sub-grants and kind of summarized what each organization included in their budget, I wrote here, like, each organization is responsible for managing their own sub-grant from ABA ROLI wage, and each organization's budget should match their scope of work. So each organization is responsible for implementing and financially supporting the activities in its sub-grant budget. So for example, I'll start with CIPE. CIPE has budgeted to give small grants to the steering committee members for the advocacy campaigns. We budgeted $15,000 for each one. Small grants to researchers to conduct analysis for the RNA, the rapid needs assessment, focus groups for those assessments. And we also budgeted for the NWBA launch event in each country and DC, and the final regional conference. And so these are all costs that CIPE will cover to implement all of these activities, meaning that, like, the launch event in each country will be 100% covered by CIPE because that's what's been included in our budget and we're the lead on that component. On the other hand, ABA will cover the costs to do the GBV and gender trainings, the reform response tracking trainings, the roundtables and outreach to government. And then just in your budget is also included office space in each country. So you're responsible for not only implementing, but financially supporting all of those components. And then for search, you budgeted for gender consultant. You budgeted some component for trainings on stakeholder engagement and the gender and GBV trainings as well, and capacity building and outreach to the government and men and other allies. And then you're the lead on the messaging campaign. I saw that you also budgeted for monitoring and office space. So as an example, like search will be leading the messaging campaign through online, offline, and social media, meaning that they will lead that component with CIPE and ABA's consultation and input, but they will be responsible for the results coming out of that component, as well as the financial support for that component. And alternatively, like CIPE is responsible for conducting the focus groups and all of those things related to the advocacy. Yeah, does that make sense to everyone?
Well, yes, it does, actually. This gives us just a general picture for our main responsibilities and events. However, at the same time, we all see that every day we saw some additional expenses to raise up. For example, like this event, for renting the space or I don't know, for coffee breaks, we do not have information coordination, who covers what and where we can get this money from.
Yeah. So
Yep.
just to respond to you about this particular event, we did not plan to have a launch event, like a project launch in Kyrgyzstan. Really, yeah, so it was not budgeted in our budget and not planned in the proposal, meaning that we didn't have like a clear mandate for who would pay for what. But because it was CIPE's initiative, that's why like we're taking it as one of like the launch events, essentially. So we're paying for the, you know, the Hyatt and all of the partner engagement and stuff. And yeah, I would say that the meetings between our organizations could fall under the operational support side. But of course, that's not something that we discussed previously. So I can see why it was an expense that seemed out of the blue. I understand that as well, because for us as well, this was not as planned as we wanted it to be. But yeah, so regarding the financial things, Estella and I have talked about, and we've done this for CIPE internally, like coming up with quarterly budgeting for the work plan. So the work plan has a financial column saying what expenses we have for each component. And so it would be a great idea to have ABA and Search also do that, so that it's clear what expenses you will have and you'll know what expenses to expect. And it looks like Barb has her hand raised.
Yeah, thanks, Kalea. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Excellent. You know, I think, Azamat, what you raise is such a great question, because reality is always so much different than the plan sometimes, right? And so I'm not exactly sure how you all have structured your communications together. And I know that you share an office, which makes things a lot easier to communicate for sure. But you might consider two things if you haven't already. The first is making sure that you have a regular standing meeting to talk about upcoming activities, to share information about who's doing what and when and where things are on the work plan and sort of status updates. but then also to do like a budget meeting. My team back at headquarters, broader than just wage, we'll do a monthly budget meeting at the end of every month once we get our financial reports in, and we'll check sort of the status of where we are versus the projected expenses and the remaining activities that we have in the grant agreements to make sure that everything is covered properly.
Thank you, Barb. Oops, sorry. Well, thank you for your thoughts. Great ideas, actually. Some of this we have been doing already, but we should really put more attention to the budget issues. And as proposed, I guess we should first discuss this internally within each of our organizations, and then have some joint budget meetings. And probably we will need to have, as also suggested, the quarterly projections on all the upcoming events. Thank you.
No, but I totally agree with the suggestion that came up, and I think we need to decide maybe after these meetings, review the quarterly plan that we have, and if we're going to make any changes to activities, to approve from everyone's side, and also to have quarterly budget for everyone. And I think it's very important to see for what is responsible, which organization, at least on the local level, so we can clearly plan it. And also maybe we can have someone as a focal point, for example, from your side, Martina, right, as a budget person, and someone for CIPE and someone from search. So the communication will be easier by one person, but of course everyone will participate, but one focal point. And also I have another question, as already Azamat raised. When we have unplanned events, maybe we need to plan the deadline or some period of time in advance that we need to plan or discuss if we are going to make these changes, so it can be the process will be smoothly for the having budget and sharing the responsibility. And also the other question, for example, if CIPE is conducting final region conference, but we are going to invite media people and we have the media component, does it mean that this part of the media component of the final region conference will be covered by search, or everything will be covered by CIPE? Do we have any sharing response? For example, this time for the internal launching event, search is involved, and they are doing printing materials for this. But what about the other activities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that the easy answer to that is to look at the budget for what we've already budgeted for. I think we just need to use that as a guide. Of course, we can always change it and submit a budget, edit request, in case our components or scope of work changes. But I would say that if it's not included into search's budget, then they are not responsible for it. I can't read the box. Me neither. I'll read it out loud. She said, that's a great question, Estelle, and it gets to expectations. This is why regular standing meetings to talk through upcoming activities and funding for them will be helpful.
But we don't have budget for media support for all these other activities, right? We have one budget for the media campaign. So that might include, right, like we can decide that like inviting media or doing a video about a specific activity is going to be part of the media campaign, but that doesn't include like logistical support, like printing banners or flyers, which is part of your activity cost, right? And not part of the broader media campaign. So I would distinguish between like what we consider part of the media campaign and then definitely coordinating, right, with musical, like if you have an idea of like what you want, for example, for the regional conference, there might be some things that between the two of you come up with as a good idea, as a way to contribute to the media campaign during the conference. But we just have budget for the campaign. We don't have budget for like support for media and printing and things for all the other activities, right? Yeah, so I would just distinguish, and I think that's what we mean between like media support and the campaign.
But I have just a comment to what Shabnam said, yes, but sometimes it makes the situation a little bit not easy because of everyone need to be included in the media printing materials and putting the logos and disclaimers, etc. But even it's easy when you have one person or one organization who's responsible for it and relating the media or public materials. So it means that for each activity, each organization is responsible separately, right? And search will not take responsibility for it.
Yeah, because we also have two different branding and media approaches for the project, right?
Yes, it was
and ABA and CIPE's version of that, right? Like we just did this waiver, and like Search's branding and media approach for the campaign is different. So it's not even the same standard, right, for the materials that you will be producing for steering committee activities and things like this. I do agree with you. Like, I think it's helpful if you have a focal point in your team that is responsible for doing your printing and design. It generally helps to have like a comms focal point within your program team to consolidate that. But I don't think it necessarily helps to have Search be that for the whole consortium, also because our activity, like you still need someone that's going to know the content that you're printing, right? And that knows like what needs to be on there. So, and then Search would not be the best placed person to know that stuff. But definitely coordinating on what types of content would go in the need to be included in the messaging campaign. And if like, Search can leverage what it's doing in the media campaign to help the activities, and highlight them and amplify them. But yeah, I think it's helpful if we distinguish between like the support and like printing flyers is like more of a logistics activity for an like for your meeting than a media campaign activity, right? Whereas like developing videos or inviting press or things like this can be a larger initiative.
Yeah, I think that's a really good distinction, and it might be that maybe we need to take a look at the needs for the communications for each activity, and it might be that we need to hire like a consultant to do that because it is a lot of work and it needs to be done right, especially since the messaging for this project is so complicated. So maybe it can be that like, yeah, like it was a great reminder that we have two media approaches for this project, one for the media campaign and one for the rest of the activities implemented by CIPE and ABA. So Search will be, the lead and their focal point for their component on the media campaign, and then perhaps CIPE and ABA, depending on if ABA has any public facing events under this project, we could share that cost. If not, then CIPE can take that cost and have a focal point for our communications.
Ask the other question. Sorry, it's not related to budget, but it's about the responsibility. For example, our colleagues in Tajikistan, they have a meeting with steering committee, and they find out that some messages need to be shared on social media pages about the results of the meeting discussion of the steering committee. So who will take responsibility to publish it on social media and translate it to several languages, for example? Is it the responsibility of the organization who is organizing this meeting, or Search will help with this process too?
Can we clarify? So it's like the steering committee is announcing something they did. Is that what you're talking?
Yes, for example, they had training and they had some exercise and they worked on several messages and they want to publish it on social media pages. So people start to know what they're doing, for example. And we know that Search will create social media pages for the wage project and it should be shared there. So we will need to ask Search team to do it, right? And you will take responsibility for publishing and also for translating to local language and maybe if it's needed to English language.
So if it's like not official, I mean, only the social media pages, we can do it. I mean, for example, to share if the, for example, the team in Tajikistan or Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, they give us the information, like, for example, what happened, what was their content and everything, we can publish this, but yeah. But if it's like so official and it's like a press release, I think it can be done by the like CIPE Tajikistan team.
Because also, again, to distinguish between the like branding and the marking and everything, right? Like if it goes on the social media page, it's gonna go under the wage logo, but with no proper right flag and all that kind of stuff. And it's gonna go under that media strain, right? And that's exactly the process Mirzagul just said. But if we want to release it as like an official thing with like the US flag and all the logos and like that kind of post on, I don't know, that's going to go to the wage website or something like that, that would be a different process that, you know, I think whoever's leading that activity should lead and get the right, because then that would have to go through also all the approvals required and a whole different process. So I think it helps to distinguish between those two different strains of media work.
Because right now,
And I send, for example, the press release that we are trying to share with the media, and she's like confused a little bit. Like, this is a media campaign or all? It's like a lot of questions. No confused. I mean, she said that is it like from the media campaign or from the like old like overall press release of the project, and there should be the all branding, full branding, like the flag and everything. And I think it should be clear, for example, for Emily at least.
Yes, Barb, please go ahead.
Thank you, Nur Sultan, and I apologize. I was raising my hand and lowering my hand because I think Shabnam and her colleagues there have explained it well. You know, I think though, ultimately it'll become clearer as we go, and we'll find a groove as we go on. I think what I would encourage us to do is, you know, Asel, anytime that we have something that is clearly sort of media related, like media support related to supporting the steering committees and the coalitions in their efforts as opposed to the media campaign. I think that is probably something that is generated by CIPE, but what I would encourage us to do is to make sure that we consult with Search and with ABA as we go into that communication piece to make sure that they have informed and understand what's happening and that there's some agreement. And like I said, I feel like we'll start to get into a rhythm as we go forward, but I think a lot of that actually will be generated from CIPE. At least that's my impression. And you know, Kalea and Asel, if you have a different understanding of the proposal, just let me know. But regardless, I think that we should make sure that we are coordinating and communicating with ABA and Search as these things come together, so that we don't inadvertently conflict with some message on the media campaign or something else.
yeah, thank you, Barb. That's super helpful. So I think I definitely agree that any content that's coming out of the steering committee's work and all of that, CIPE will lead that, but anything that is going to be posted on social media, like we will provide the content to Search, but Search will do the posting and manage the social media aspect for all the countries. Okay.
Sorry, may I ask the other question regarding the media part? So if CIPE or ABA conducting event, then they will take responsible for media coverage too. And we need to write and approve the press release and other public document that we're going to publish from GW, right? Or there is no need to do it. And it should be directly from CIPE and ABA, or should it be through Search as a media component focal point for our project? Procedure.
Yeah, any big high-level public-facing press releases, that's kind of the only thing that needs to be approved by GW. Any other like small parts of the project, like social media posts or other things like that, don't need GW approval. But for the conference, for example, if we're going to be sharing a lot of language, yeah, CIPE would take the lead on that. Like CIPE country staff and the DC team. And I think we would follow the same procedure that Barb just laid out, where we would consult you guys, but they would not be responsible for that media stuff.
I have a question about press releases. Do we need to coordinate the draft press releases with the embassy? Based on our experience in the past, we had quite a headache, and actually in terms of the timing. And it was always required, irrespective of whether it was USAID, INL, or GTIP funding.
Barb, I don't know if you can speak to this in our other projects. Is the press release announced through the embassy something that the other wage projects have followed?
I haven't run into it with wage yet, but on other projects under business agendas that were funded through the State Department versus the embassy, it's always coordinated through Washington. So when we get GW to sign off on the press release, it's typically then GW that vets it with the embassy. So there is a lag time, I think, right, Kalea? There's like a 2-week request for these things, which makes it a little bit difficult. But I mean, I think if we give a heads up in terms of, any sort of press release or press event or public event that's coming up, the more that we can coordinate in terms of the lead time and expectation of when things will be ready for approval, I think the better. And we heard yesterday, Azamat, of course, in our meeting with the embassy, that they are happy to help us push out any messages from social media or press releases or whatever, if it's helpful. They did not ask us to send the press release, anything like that, to them initially. So I think it all is routed through GW, but there still is a lag time on that. So I might be talking in circles. Ultimately, our only responsibility that I understand to date is that the press releases are cleared with GW, but it doesn't hurt to make sure that the embassy is aware of any sort of public facing events that are upcoming so that they can be prepared to talk with GW about any communications like that. Hopefully I'm clear. If not, I apologize. Sometimes I talk in circles, so push me and tell me to be more clear if I need to be.
Yeah, thanks, Barb. That's super helpful. I think the main takeaway from that is that the GW approval includes embassy approval. That's why it takes so long. because they need to send it to all the embassies and get their approval. And I remember specifically that's what they were citing as the reason why it was taking so long. So I don't think we need to do anything additional. Okay, so I heard from some of you what would be helpful. So I had planned to like go through kind of the decision-making process for CIPE side, and then hear from both of the teams what the decision-making process is for your side. I don't know if that would be helpful, or we can go through the work plan like someone suggested and talk about the activities and everyone's role in each one and like contributions. You can let me know what would be most helpful at this point. Also, if anyone online has anything to share or any questions, let us know.
Kalea, I think that maybe going through the work plan will actually get to this understanding of decision-making processes. I think if you
oh, Barb is talking.
oh, sorry. No, I was just saying that it might be helpful. You know, I think it was a good suggestion to talk through the work plan. Because when you do that, it'll become clear. We can talk about the decision-making process in each of these, and it'll start to become a bit clearer how that works. That's just a suggestion.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna pull up the work plan. I'm gonna show the quarterly work plan. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Mhm. Okay. See if I can make this any bigger. Yeah, I can also share the link so that if you're on your computer, you can view that as well. Okay. All right, so let's see. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. So do you maybe want to take us through the work plan and we can talk about the role of each organization? Okay.
So I can start right here. So we divided our work plan for the main activities that were already indicated in the main work plan that was approved by GV, and we just detailed it. And the first part was the conducting stakeholder mapping. And as I know, all partners were actively involved in this process. And we already done this part for most of the countries, including for Tajikistan and Kazakhstan. We are just, I think we will have this process only for Uzbekistan and maybe some parts for Turkmenistan because of the Malika. We will need to review together. But for Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, it was done. And the next step was the selection of the potential local organizations who will join us. And we already had the template of the selection criteria that was provided by CVS, I know, right? And we just adapted with some specifics of each country. And Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan have the similar selection criteria document, and Tajikistan with some changes. ABA, Search, and CIPE actively involved in all this process in the discussion, but the process of discussion was led by CIPE. And the next step, it was selection, and in the next step we are now is the selection and the establishing the steering committee for each country. So what we did, we developed the outreach plan for each country with the specifics. This process was also led by CIPE, but was actively involving Search and ABA. And also we created presentation about the project, and not one pager, I think it's a flyer about the project. And these documents was developed by CIPE, but with the contribution of Search and ABA also. And it was prepared in Russian language. So I just want to be more detailed, because we have some questions. And we also had questions who will translate it to other languages, for example, Tajik or Kazakh. And the responsibility for presentation took CIPE. We will translate it by ourselves, not Search. And the flyer also, right, Murzagul? It's also responsibility of CIPE. And then we now we're in the process of the developing diagnostic assessment. It is in the process still, and the responsibility for the diagnostic assessment will take CIPE. But I think in the process of making interview and conducting this interview, I think Search and ABA will be involved also, right? And we need to involve them or not. What do you think? Because as I know from the beginning of the project, it was said that each partner should be equally involved in all process, and everything what we're doing, we need to consult with each other. So for example, when we have an outreach meetings with our local identified partners, for example, introduction meetings, Search, ABA, and CIPE equally participate at this meeting, and CIPE lead this. What about the diagnostic assessment? Should we involve everyone in this process, or it's enough that CIPE will do this and provide the result of the diagnostic assessment as an analytical document? Okay, Barbs. Oops, sorry.
Thank you, Estelle. That's a great question. And I apologize because I have an opinion on everything, and it doesn't necessarily mean my opinion is right. When it comes to the diagnostic assessment that CIPE does, I think it's actually a great idea if ABA, Rowley, and Search are involved. I think, I would ask my colleagues to let me know what their comfort level is and how they would want to go about it. But for example, when we go through that process of hearing from our partners, Search, I feel like it might actually help inform your media campaign, right? And for ABA, I think it's useful for you to know, because you're also an advocate and a lead on this program and talking with the government officials. So the more that you hear and are involved in some of these activities, I feel like the better placed you are in terms of also sharing information, disseminating information. But that said, I realize, it ends up being sort of laborious and and maybe a bit too much. So I do welcome your thoughts and your comments on this. My opinion and my offer here is more from the idea of information sharing and making sure that you feel comfortable with the content and the information, so that you feel like you can speak as astutely and as technically as CIPE does in many ways on this project. But I certainly welcome your thoughts. I mean, I think it ends up being just a bit of staff time, and whether or not we can, whether you can cover that or not is the question.
I mean, I think, and Marissa will correct me, but, or like whatever you think, but it also depends what you mean by being involved in the diagnostic assessment. I think it makes sense for search to help review the tool that you use, to make inputs on that, and definitely review in terms of content and finalizing of whatever report comes out of that. And, you know, our ILT team is also involved in these types of, I don't know if this is like similar to the RNA kind of process, but you know, if it's a research output of the project too, I think our ILT team would be involved in like review and input and any kind of report. But in terms of conducting the assessment, I mean, we don't have enough staff budgeted to cover like, you know, research. And if that's under your budget, then, you know, I would assume that you do, but yeah, so I would like, yeah, I think it depends on like what level of involvement you're talking about.
Well, I absolutely support Shabnam. What you said about the, first of all, we should determine for ourselves the level of involvement. In general, my understanding was that CIPE may have already sort of template or model or toolkit. So if you just let us know what kind of involvement you would like from us, and then we can consider and discuss.
Okay, very good suggestion from the Shabnam. Maybe we can involve ABA and search on the beginning stage when we'll discuss the tool, and maybe on the final stage when we have the final document for the approval, and all other process of conducting the diagnostic assessment will be led by CIPE. So yes, so I think it can be the decision, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what might be helpful is as we're going through this work plan is to write in the next column, like I don't know if people are familiar with the RACI chart, like responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. So I think in the next column, we can just write like search and ABA. So for this one, for example, would be consulted and informed, right? Like of the results.
Yes.
Okay.
And the next part was the outreach of potential partners. Actually, we had several ideas how we will do it. The first, it was that CIPE will let everything conducting the meeting with the identified local partners. And other idea was, for example, CIPE knows some organizations very well, ABA knows some people really good, and the search knows some people also good. And maybe it is easier when each organization can lead this meeting based on the contact that already they had. But from the experience of Kyrgyzstan, most of the meetings was conducted, led by CIPE, including the inviting the partners, but actively in each meeting, ABA and search involved. So what it was for Kyrgyzstan, I don't know what about the Kazakhstan and Tajikistan, maybe they have the other situation. Zarina and Zarina's questioning, is CIPE responsible for translating diagnostic assessment to Russian? Yes, it will be included our budget, right?
Yeah. I think we can safely say that the translation of any document that is part of the activity that you are responsible for, we are budgetarily responsible for covering that.
So outreach part is also the responsibility of CIPE, but with actively involving ABA and search in the process of meetings and having consultation, right? Everyone is agree? Okay. And then is the interactive coalition building session, what we are going to have. CIPE is leading also, and ABA search is involved, but ABA is, we are doing like mixed one, right? Not only introductory, but like internal launch. We are mixing them, and ABA took full responsibility for the government engagement in this part. Search fully take responsibility for the media outreach and printing for this time. It was for Kyrgyzstan, but for other countries, we need to clarify for the future, everything will be covered by CIPE only, right? Okay. And the next one is the establishing the steering committee. So establishing the steering committee, that leading of establishing also will be responsibility of the CIPE, right? And we will only consult with search and ABA. Am I right or not?
Yes.
Okay. So only on that consultative level. So the diagnostic assessment will be by CIPE and etc. And the first round of events. And the first round of events, it was the first part of the trainings that we need to conduct for our steering committee. So it will based on the which trainings are identified there, and based on the who will lead those trainings. For example, on the GBV, it will be led by ABA. On the do no harm, I guess, search, right, and etc. So based on the topics. So does it mean, just to clarify, for example, if you're talking about the GBV training and it's the ABA's training, it means they will cover all costs too. Also the coordination process, inviting steering committee, conducting the training space, inviting the speaker, paying for the speaker, etc. And for the translation, everything will be covered by ABA.
Yes.
And the coordination too.
Yes.
Okay.
Did everyone understand that? And same for search as well.
Yes, and for CIPE too.
Here, for example, the trainings,
Sorry, actually, technically, the way our budget was done for the training lines is actually only adaptation of the module and translation of the module. We don't actually have training costs budgeted. So we can adjust that to cover like online training. But it depends like what other people have budgeted, but another option would be if people have budget for in-person training and we're gonna bring people together, then search could pay for like the trainer and like adding a day, right, to just do the content that we would do online, but otherwise we would be doing them online. Yeah, because we don't have budget for it. We have very little.
Yes, Barb, please go ahead.
Thank you. And that's a great suggestion. I mean, if we all have a piece of a training puzzle, right, for the partners, it makes the most sense to spend the less money, even if we do have the budget for the training, right? So if there's a way to coordinate a training day or something like that, which, you know, that might be hard too, but if there's a way to coordinate that, search comes to the table, CIPE comes to the table, ABA comes to the table with the training for the partners all in one, then search, you wouldn't have to worry about those costs, and we can certainly figure that out. This is why this type of meeting is so great. You know, we start to figure out, you know, what the reality is and where the holes are, and making sure that we know what the expectations are. So thanks so much for raising that, and we can certainly figure that out. The other thing I wanted to raise, and this might not be exactly the right time, we can talk about it further, but I'll just leave this here. One of the things that we found when I just visited Moldova, the wage program there that's very similar to this project, is that the gender-based violence and harassment trainings that ABA was going to do for the business associations, they actually had a very difficult time implementing that and getting the partners' attention to participate in this. So they were able to conduct trainings for civil society organizations, but the business associations in Moldova were very, very small. They had one staff member that was doing everything, not just this project, her daily, you know, routine for the association and for the membership. And so, you know, the staff member ended up being sort of distracted and non-responsive, and it became quite a problem. And so one thing that I would suggest that we think about is, and the diagnostic assessment, of course, will help this, is before we launch in on any sort of capacity building training, before we launch in on gender-based violence and harassment training or safeguarding, is to have a conversation, a dialogue, almost like a focus group. And again, maybe the diagnostic assessment gets to this, but with the membership, so that we start to understand what the awareness is before we just launch into a training for the sake of the training. I think that's what they're doing in Moldova, and we could talk about that a little bit more when we get to the learning agenda. And there's, you know, we have to pivot there a little bit in terms of how we implement, but just wanted to put that on the table as well.
I'm just gonna open the floor to any other online participants in case you wanted to add anything.
Not so far from our side.
Yes, Mahroub, please go ahead.
Yeah, I said no so far from our side.
Just went through our budget, and in terms of joint capacity building trainings, they are supposed to be conducted remotely. So we don't have money for offline trainings. So it's just for information, for your information.
It's for other trainings.
Yeah, we have other trainings, but not that GBV or gender training. So we have capacity building and outreach for government, roundtable for government, and training on reform response tracking system. That's it.
Those will go offline.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, CIPE also budgeted to have these trainings online as well, because we wrote this during COVID. So the first regional conference is also budgeted remotely. And so I think it's just, Barb, maybe you have some suggestions about this, but I think we just need to be really flexible. I mean, just obviously we need to stay true to what we've budgeted, because otherwise we can't, you know, feasibly do the project. But perhaps that means like any in-person costs that we do have, at least from CIPE side, we use that opportunity to like have all of the things at the same time, because we all know that in-person events in Central Asia is much more effective than online training. So especially, I mean, even for CIPE, like for example, in Tajikistan, we're figuring out how to best do the trainings. And it might be that Mohru is traveling to each region herself to do that, because there's like no other. Yeah, so for at least for CIPE, like we're being really flexible with our budget, meaning that trying to move line items around when possible. Yeah, let's just keep that in mind. And so when we have those standing meetings to talk about upcoming events, we can see what CIPE has planned for in-person, and then we can see when, like how we can combine everything.
And maybe during the diagnostic assessment, we can also make a small questionnaire. What works best for our participants, online or offline, and based on this, we can make some changes if it's needed. But I totally agree with Kalea that, and I think colleagues also agree that during the 2 years, so much online meetings can affect negatively, and we can lose most of the people, and we must try to make it as much as possible to have some offline events too. Okay, it will be discussed, right? This point.
Yeah, so the training. I'll summarize in the work plan that we all budgeted for online trainings, but we'll try to combine it with other in-person events.
And the next one, it wasn't included in the work plan initially, but we decided it's important to have for our consortium to make a monthly evaluation of needs and feedback of local partners who will become members of our coalition or the steering committee. So I think it will be like an online document, like a questionnaire that we will do and make some analysis. So does it mean that someone should take full responsibility, or we can divide between the partners based on the amount of trainings that will be conducted this month? For the sake of doing, sorry, we can read the full.
Barb said, I don't really have anything to add. I'm not a fan of doing trainings for the sake of doing trainings. I'd rather partners learn by doing, but we'll still need to do some, of course. We'll have to get creative and try to keep cost savings in our budgets to implement. Okay. Sorry, Estelle, for your question, was that about this one, conducting monthly evaluation? So that's like feedback from the local partners on the trainings? Yeah, so what is the comfort level of search and ABA? So for example, when you do a stakeholder engagement training afterwards, could you be responsible for, getting in touch with the partners that participated and getting their feedback? It can just be a survey, like.
Yeah, I mean, it's normal for us to do some kind of evaluation after any training. It wouldn't be on a monthly basis. It would just be after the training. So
We suggested to make it monthly at least, or maybe once in 2 months, because if we do training and after each training do a feedback survey, sometimes people so tired of this and at the end they will not just fill them in. So I mean, like an overall document that we can do for maybe once a month or once in 2 months, something like this.
So we have a monitoring process in our organization, like the M&A department. They will do, and we have like I don't know, their own work plan and etc. And we should talk with them, because I think in these cases our M&A department will monitor after trainings, because after each training. Because they will also participate to the trainings. They will have, I don't know, the pre-test or post-test, I don't know, this kind of process of TMA.
Okay, let's start from the each training, and if we see that people are tired of surveys, we can just review it and maybe make it not so often.
but so is your concern is all that, like, if we do it after every training, it's also too often though? Like, so maybe then it's more about coordinating between, like, if there's more than one training once a month, like combining that process so that everybody's not doing it separately. But I think, yeah, in terms of coordination, and I think anyways, probably there shouldn't be more than that many a month, or people are going to get exhausted of being online. So if there's only one a month, that organization leads on doing their normal evaluation. But if there's like several trainings that month, maybe then that's when to coordinate on like whose M&E will take a lead and incorporate the other.
So the next one is like technically what we're already doing, and CIPE leading this weekly meetings, not weekly, we changed it to bi-weekly meetings. And we also made the mapping of the existing other VA supporting program, and all partners were involved, CIPE led. And we are in the process of outreaching them. Also CIPE leading and all partners are involved. We already had the 60 organizations, and the internal launch event. Everyone is involved now, but CIPE is leading this internal launch event that we have now. And the other was about yes, the coalition, introductory coalition building session that we are going to have, and we about the and involving AWCCM. We were discussing, right? We were going to work with them or not. So it is still the pending question, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to us to decide.
Okay. Yeah, we discussed about Moldova, but yes, CIPE will be responsible for it. We will discuss and let everyone know. And then is establishing a steering committee. So CIPE will lead, and ABA search will be involved on the consultative level, right? Okay. And MIU will be developed by ABA, right? Not by CIPE. Or CIPE responsible for it?
I think CIPE should be responsible with ABA consulted, but I want to ask Barb's opinion. Sorry, Barb. So Asel was saying that should be responsible for developing the MOU with the local partners. So I was saying that perhaps CIPE should lead this process and ABA would be consulted since it's an MOU with the local partners, or is there another framework that you think would work?
Yeah, I think ABA can definitely help us out with this. The MOU template that we have sort of bounces from one country to the next, but it does include like an arbitration clause that's going to depend on what the process is in country. So having ABA's sort of legal mind to review that MOU and make sure that it is what it needs to be for each country is going to be critical. So it's sort of consultation, but it's maybe a bit more consultation than than what we agree. I mean, it's not something that I would necessarily solely put on ABA to lead, but we definitely need their legal minds to make sure that the MOU, and there's also a code of conduct, is what it needs to be for each country.
We'll be happy to review and give our recommendations.
It means that CIPE team need to develop and adapt MOU and code of conduct, and just consult with ABA, right, for finalizing it.
Yes, so we have the templates and we can use that to
Yes,
adapt them.
we have, and I have suggestion. Maybe it will be much easier to ask ABA take a leadership on this document because of it's the MOU, and they have more expertise on this. And we can just provide these templates from the CIPE side, and it can be adapted by ABA and signed with partners on local level. Yes, because yes, in the parallel CIPE also have so much activities to do. In parallel, CIPE will also have so much activities with the other partners.
ABA, do you have any comments on that suggestion?
Well, I believe you already been discussing this with Asel, with our Asel. So I need to know her opinion on that.
Yes, but please go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry. I mean, I think Azamat, if you're comfortable with that, I mean, we have something that's already written. It's just not written for Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and the other countries. So if we can just give you that template and have your team take a look and make it what it needs to be, that would be helpful. So it's not like starting from scratch necessarily, unless you look at it and think that it's not what it needs to be at all. But yeah, I mean, I think that would be fine if you're comfortable with that.
Well, Asel is back now, so we can discuss this issue with your presence. So we're talking about the MOU with the steering committee members. So the suggestion is that ABA Role would take a lead on this using the existing templates and support from CIPE. So you have been discussing this, and you already agreed that we'll take care of it.
Yeah, the only one question I have, MOU are supposed to be signed in 3 languages, right? For example, for each country, it's Kyrgyz, Russian, and English for Kyrgyzstan. And if it's supposed to be officially translated, this is for your information, that we don't have budget for the translation. So.
Guys, so why it's so complicated? I mean, why do we need that MOU signed in 3 languages? Well, just for my curiosity, one of the languages would be more than enough, and we may have some unofficial translation of it in English, for example. So just some food for thought.
What, regarding the translation, are you saying, Asel, that it needs to be translated into all 3 languages to be legally like fine? Okay. Okay.
Well,
Barb has
the
a
MOU itself, it's not an official agreement. It's just MOU. It's just the expression of our intents. So, and there is nothing to be, legally.
Yeah, it's not even really binding. Yeah, Barb, can she?
Yeah. Barb, please go.
I think Azamat raises a great question here. And this is one of those places where I think we are flexible and we see what our local partners' comfort level is, right? And perhaps guide them in a certain way. Honestly, I've worked with coalitions that never signed an MOU and things work just fine. Those coalitions, though, were smaller and they were typically among individual business owners and not different organizations. And then we've also signed MOUs, just simple MOUs that I'm not exactly sure what the legal standing was, but there was at least a clause in there that talked about some sort of dispute resolution if anything came up. Whether or not we need something that is officially binding, Azamat, you and your team know best how to manage this, but it might be that, if it's not really an officially binding document anyway, we don't necessarily need the 3 languages. So I don't want to overcomplicate things if we don't need to. So it might just be that we wait and see what the comfort level is of our partners and guide them along the way, and just ask ABA to consult with the partners and offer guidance and advice on that for them when we get to that point.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great. So is that clear then, how we're going to approach it? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we already provided the template of Papua New Guinea for the MOU, and based on this, I think it will be developed for Central Asia, but more message that in Tajikistan, people will not sign the document in foreign language, and we will need to translate in Tajik language. So the translation cost will be taken by CIPE, right? Because ABA don't have budgeting for it. And after the translation, who will take the responsibility of reviewing it another language, for example, Bahadur, right? He will take the responsibility for the reviewing the document in Tajik language. So everything translated clearly. And it's the same for other countries.
Okay, so CIPE.
For Kyrgyzstan, I think it's enough to have in Russian. For Tajikistan, we will have to translate into Tajik. And what about Kazakhstan on this?
I think we need translation Kazakh. Yeah.
Okay, but in Kyrgyzstan, it's enough to have in Russian, but we have several organizations from rural areas, and I'm not confident that they will understand fully the Russian language document. So maybe we will need to translate to local languages, at least in each country. And I guess it's same for Uzbekistan too.
How long is that document normally? So if it's just a few pages,
It's like 4 or 5 pages.
less is better. When I'm talking about just one language, more languages is more formalization of the whole process, and people just being afraid of signing everything. This may not relate to Kyrgyzstan, but anyway, we should just be friends with our colleagues, but not the someone who pushes this formal process all the time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that comment. Yeah, I think as Barb was saying, it really just depends on the environment. Like if we're finding that in Kyrgyzstan, the coalition is coming together regularly and everyone is really actively participating, and it seems like using an MOU would actually detract from the coalition, then we don't need it. It's not a requirement in any way. So we can, as Barb was saying, yeah, just keep it open.
There are questions from Zarina and Mohru. So, yeah, Zuchu, it would be great to gather all partner in one place and not this one. Sorry, can we go back to the launching event? All 3 partners are responsible for this event, or CIPE only? What are our roles? Just a moment. And yeah, this is better. Zarina, if you want, I'm unmuting and you can
Thank you,
speak.
Sultan. Hi,
to
everyone.
colleagues.
So I just noticed that all 3 partners are responsible for launching event conduction, because previously I said that only CIPE is responsible for conducting this event. So,
Okay, so the launch event, just to clarify, we did not plan to do a project launch in every country. What we budgeted and plan to do is do the launch event when we have the National Women's Business Agenda document. So that is like officially what we'll do in each country. Regarding the internal project launch, if we want to do that in every country, we definitely can, but we just need to plan accordingly with our budget. And it is CIPE's responsibility because it's within our scope of work in terms of engaging the partners through the steering committee and selecting them and so forth. And in terms of search and ABA roles, just to clarify that, here, let me go back to this up here. The coalition building sessions and information sessions for selected local partners. So in Kyrgyzstan, ABA and Search were responsible for the media and government engagement this time because we didn't have this session. And yeah, basically the Kyrgyzstan example is an anomaly and we won't be replicating this again in the future. CIPE will be responsible for all of the components of any events related to the steering committee, but we can obviously consult search if we're doing social media posts or the press release or something like that, to get them to review it, and inviting government officials, we will also ask ABA.
Thank you, Kalia.
Yes, Zarina, please go.
Yes, I said thank you. Thank you for information.
Okay.
We are going to communication. So the next one was about the communication between the members of the steering committee. So it is indicated that CIPE is a search responsible and ABA will support us, but who is the leading? So it's understood the CIPE is also responsible for this communication, right? Communication leading among the partners. Okay. And managing these groups also responsibility of CIPE. Okay, we can just, the other systems belong to this part. And then the other one is the virtual regional learning conference for members of the steering committee. And as I saw previously, it was the responsibility of CIPE, right? Fully, the coordination and the budgeting also. So when we have the virtual regional learning conference, I think we need to have a media coverage. Does this event include to the media campaign? So are you going to support the media coverage or not? Just to clarify.
In the proposal is planned virtual, and I believe we will do it virtually. Yeah, it was planned virtually, yes.
So CIPE will let the media coverage, but we will have support from your side when it's needed. Okay. And it's, I know we have two regional learning conferences, right? The first one and the next one at the end. Okay.
Only the final one was budgeted as in person.
Okay. And the next one is to conduct capacity building training. And the first training is the CIPE responsibility, and then search and CIPE's, right? Okay. So I think it's clear, this part, activity 1.2.
Yeah, so we'll all be in charge of our own training.
And the next one is also, I think, clear about the trainings, and we see who is responsible for what. Yes, the next one is also CIPE responsible, right, for all those trainings. The agenda of trainings, okay. And then we have round tables, and for the round tables with the government representatives are responsible ABA with the consultative involvement of search, right? Design and plan for outreach and engagement with key government representatives, target outreach plan. I think ABA already started to do this, and you already have the outreach for the government, right? And we will just need to finalize it after the election process for Kyrgyzstan and for other countries. I know Tajikistan already finalized. For Uzbekistan, we will work on it, and for Kazakhstan,
It will be ready by November 1st.
And then you will do capacity building trainings for the government representatives in each country. So forming relationship, common understanding between government representing champions in Kyrgyzstan. Search responsibility. I can't understand. The capacity building is, it's written that search, right? And in this part, ABA. I think it's not search, ABA responsibility, right? For the capacity building trainings, we need to delete the search part.
There was also part of your budget for capacity and outreach to government men and other allies, so not just government. Yeah.
Yeah, so we also have a component of this.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think, similar with the trainings, these two activities were led by AB, and then search has a component, which I think we need to make sure to coordinate on, right? Because we, for example, for the gender and inclusion training, we don't want to be repeating stuff, and I think ABA is the lead on those activities. So whatever search decides to cover, like, it should complement, like, if you guys are doing a gender training, then like we can do a do no harm training that is building on that, but not repeating stuff, right? And I think similar for this activity, right? So yeah, search has some budget to do activities around this engagement of government and stakeholders and, champions, pretty much different types of champions for the women, right? But it's not very specific. So we could see what best complements the roundtable process. So like if it's doing maybe like trust building activities, like as a precursor or a follow-up to the roundtables or something along those lines, dialogue activities, anything that would complement it.
And also, I think the preparation of the list of participants, the involvement of gender consultant, and conducting one roundtable, it's also ABA's, right? Not search, because here it says like the search is responsible.
Yeah, so I think like for your roundtables, you would do your own participant list and everything, right? And then search would do it for the search activity under this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
We
yeah,
both
I
have
think in project
this budget.
proposal it was indicated that the 4 roundtables, and roundtables is with the involvement not only government representatives but all publicly, right? Who are the champions, are the responsibility of search. And for the capacity building training, and it was the responsibility of ABA. It was ISO.
So here we mean roundtable for government feedback, right? If we mean the roundtable on government feedback, then it's in our budget and it's our activity.
I think it's just two different activities under the same activity, right? So like we both have activities under 1.12D. And so we would do our own preparations for each of those activities, right? Like, but we just need to coordinate so that we're doing something that works together.
If we could have like search and ABA after this, whenever you can, clarify that in the work plan and split it up so that it's clear like who's doing what and who's covering what in their budget. Yeah, so we can return to this. I'll just highlight it to show that we need to work on it.
So we can move right. The next activity related to the consult of our steering committee with other group of women and another group of women. So it's fully responsibility of CIPE, and with the involving ABN search as a on the consultative base, right? And the next one was the rapid assessment we're already doing this and CIPE leading this process. And the next activities that we haven't detailed yet, I think, but it can be helpful to go through too, right?
Yeah.
So the next one was about the drafting the NVBA document, and the drafting NVBA will be done by the researchers and the people who will be involved in this process. And I think it's also responsibility of CIPE. And of course, with the involving of AB and certain consultative base, and also the Women's Empowerment Alliance, establishing Women's Empowerment Alliance. It's also CIPE's responsibility, but with no? Okay.
I think actually,
Yes, Barb, please go ahead.
Thanks, sorry. I think when it comes to drafting the business agenda itself, this is another place where ABA's legal mind will be very helpful. Ultimately, again, we're about local ownership of the business agenda and of the process and the product. And we want to make sure that it's the voice of the private sector. So we do want an economic think tank or a economic researcher to draft the business agenda. But to have them consult with, interview, get ABA's opinion, particularly when it comes to legislation and regulation and implementation of those laws and regulations, I think is going to be critical. So having someone from ABA ready to consult with that researcher as they're drafting the document and doing a review to make sure that any legal aspects, of course, are sound and make sense and are simple will be key.
Yeah, we agree.
thanks, Barb. So it looks like the output here is wrong. So I'm just gonna add in the right output that should be here, because I think this is from Moldova. Feedback on draft NWs is gathered. Yeah, that matches it. Okay, so final and yeah, I think we need to update this. Yeah, but essentially we can yeah, we can this one here.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. This is originally from the proposal. Oh, you don't have it. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. I'm like, what? Okay. Here, let me share it in the chat.
I don't have access to chat. I need to join
Oh.
online meeting.
Oh, I see. Let me send it to you on WhatsApp so you have it. Sorry, everyone. Oh, sharing my screen on WhatsApp. Okay.
Even you can send to my WhatsApp.
I'm sending it to you.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay, we're going to continue on this document.
So the next one is the drafting. We need to draft it, and CIPE will take responsibility, but already as Barb mentioned, ABA will have the legal part of the document, and then we are going to get the feedback on draft. So it is indicated that also CIPE will lead and ABN search will support us when it's needed. Yes, and then I have a question. So when we talk about the sharing the draft of NVBA to broad range of women entrepreneurs, we are going to share with the channels that we have and also conducting a town hall session. But I think it's maybe can be helpful to use the media channels too. And maybe we can ask people to join these discussions and make some media coverage. Does it include to media campaign activities, this part of the project? 2.1b.
So can I jump in?
Something.
Yeah, I want to make sure that I understand the activity correctly, because what I understand from the business agenda process and how we've done this is once we have that draft, we start doing these town hall sessions, but we don't want the media to know about the draft yet, right? We don't want them to know about it until it's finalized. We don't want the general public to know about it until it's finalized. So I would be very careful about using media channels to bring in a broad section of stakeholders to review the document and offer feedback. I would keep that more closed.
Okay, Bob. Okay, Bob, thanks. And for what I find out from Uzbekistan, we find out that most of the women entrepreneurs, they are united informally, informally in the social media channels, and they have like a private Telegram or Facebook groups. So maybe we will use those channels, but not publicly through main media resources.
Oh,
So
yeah,
there is
that's
no
fine.
involvement of
If it's a
search.
private channel, sure. If it's just the entrepreneurs,
Barbara's
but
saying something.
oh, sorry. If it's a private channel, that's absolutely fine. Something that is narrow and is understood that it's not for public consumption. And if there are any media or journalists that are a part of that, they know that it's not the time yet to publicize the document or pieces within the document, because you want to have that nice splashy event where it's final, you have a nice glossy printed version to hand out and what have you. You don't want to get ahead of yourselves.
Okay, thank you. So the next activity is related to the finalizing the document. It's also the responsibility of the site. We'll take the lead on this, and with the help of local research partners. And the next one is the to conduct a joint capacity building training on advocacy, and this will be led also by CIPE. And then we have a launch event for as an input the right organization.
They may be leading the reform response tracking component.
I think it's later.
Oh, it's later. Yeah.
Yes, it's only for advocacy,
Oh,
for
okay.
developing the advocacy plan. And then we are going to have a launch event for the NVBA and the budgeting and also coordination responsibility of CIPE, right? And then we have an advocacy meetings, events and outreach campaigns. Yes. CIPE is leading and search makes their inputs. And then we have search and steering committee develops implement campaign, media campaign plans, and search will take lead for this. And then members of steering committee work on the reform response tracking system, and ABI Rowley will take responsibility for this. And then we have the member steering, my key stakeholders in Washington DC will be informed, and CIPE will take responsibility and budget also, right? And then country level sustainability plans and strategic planning is the CIPE responsibility. And then we have the monitoring and evaluation. Should I go through it in detail? But I think it's everything clear there, all right?
It's clear.
Yes. And so after the meeting, we will rework on the quarterly plan based on this document.
Great, thank you, Asel. So yeah, as Asel said, we will return to this document after the meeting today, especially under objective 2, because we need to update it and make sure it's detailed. But does anyone have any follow-up questions about ABA search role, budgetary questions?
Not a question, but I just think the way the actual implementation plan and the proposal is really helpful because it does already outline, right? Lead, supporting, input, which is like what you're trying to add here, but so it might be helpful to just add those lines somehow or something, because we already kind of went through that before, right? I mean, some of this might have changed, but I think a lot of it still holds true.
I just want to say thanks for this session. It makes more clearly the process and understandable of where you're working and communication with each other.
Yeah, I think this was really necessary. Yeah, and I think Shabnam, your suggestion to bring in the supporting input is good. And I think I think what we also wanted to do is just also give a little more detail about what the actual input will be. So we'll make it cleaner so that it's easier to read. But I think adding like the budget responsibility is really good too. So any questions we have, like we can just refer to this document and say, this is what we agreed on, and it'll be clear. Yep.
Just to make it clear for all of us, the activities where ABA are involved on the level of to be consulted and informed, we are not approving anything, right? So this is for just to all of us be on the same page, because it's during our outreach, it was so many things that we were supposed to approve, all of us, like invitations and other stuff. So this is like a micromanagement, and it seems to us that there should be like no room for that. I mean, it would be better if, for example, CIPE is leading on activity and CIPE is responsible. So CIPE is the one who approves the documents and stuff. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that segues into the next thing we should talk about is the decision making. Yeah, I think like, here, let me just share my PowerPoint again, 1 second. So at CIPE, we have a very clear decision-making structure that I can go through in more detail, but it's probably not that interesting for you. But essentially, Asel and I are making all the big project decisions. And, I am consulted in all project decisions and the approach, and then Asel is managing all programmatic decisions and implementation regionally. And then everyone on our team is implementing those decisions that we make as a CIPE wage team. For ABA Roli, I know that there was discussion about appointing a regional point of contact, right? But is there any update on that, or?
Well, you're right. We are in the process of these discussions, and I very much hope that in the near future this issue will be resolved. And we're looking to sort of assign one person to serve as a regional coordinator site model, actually, and based on the existing positions and stuff, but this new position will be called like a regional coordinator. So maybe next week, I don't know, we'll let you know.
Okay, and then for search, the focal point is musical, okay. So in terms of getting approvals and consulting and getting and informing everyone on things, yeah, let's just discuss kind of what the process should be for that. When someone, for example, let's go to one of the things that someone is reviewing, like the diagnostic assessment, for example. So the CIPE team has adapted it, it's finalized, then we send it to both the ABA and search teams to review. And you review it and give your comments, and then we finalize it. I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think that has been the process so far, but it has been called approval, right? Please approve it, meaning please review it, right? So yeah, Asel, do you want to just?
Yes, I just want to add, for example, the internal launching event, and we were planning the agenda of this internal launching event, and we asked all partners to review and make their inputs and to approve this document together. And also talking about the list of participants, and also talking about the flyer document that we are going to publish. And for example, in the beginning, I agree with Asel, maybe she is concerned about the bureaucracy that we have, so much documents need to be reviewed, etc. For example, we have the work plan and we're asking everyone to review it, and we have the outreach plan of the local partners, and of course it's lead CIPE, but we ask search and ABA to be involved in this process and review and together approve the final document, how the outreach work will be done. That's the process what we are doing. And as I see now, as I'm suggesting not to do it. For example, if CIPE is responsible, only CIPE do, and that the finalists just inform what's happening.
Guys, just one comment. Yes, you understand correctly, but when you give us for the review, we provide our recommendations and suggestions. But the final decision whether to include it or not is by you, right? Or again, we should sit all three organizations and just get a consensus on this.
Before we were doing that, everyone put the inputs and we have like a small meeting or maybe just call to have the final discussion what will be the final document, not only one organization leading. But if I'm mistaken and you have any suggestions, let's think. Barb wants to say something.
Actually, I think Shabnam, did you have something that you would that you wanted to jump in on? I could go after you.
Barb, go ahead, please.
Okay, super. Yeah, I mean, I think if I understand Asel and Azamat correctly, I think that is a good idea. I mean, we do want to eliminate bureaucracy as much as we can. However, I'm cognizant of the fact that the work that we do and the project that we have together may have some impact, either positive or negative, on search and ABA's status in the country. So I want to make sure that you are consulted at every step of the process, that you have an opportunity for feedback, that you have an opportunity to raise something that might become a concern or a problem, more broadly in particular. So, this idea of consulting, it's not necessarily always to get consensus on everything, but it's more a matter of keeping us all in good standing, wherever we go on things. So, Asel and Kalea, if you're comfortable with that, I'm fine as long as search and ABA are aware and have had an opportunity to provide feedback, that we make the final decision going forward on things.
I think, well, two things that might be helpful. One is that, as Kalea was saying, when the fact that we're adding more details to this kind of roles and responsibilities, we've already been a bit more specific about what we're being informed and consulted on, right? Like the diagnostic tool, not the whole assessment process, but like the final assessment report, for example. So maybe it will be helpful that like, as we're detailing those, to also be like, not necessarily being consulted and informed on like an invitation letter, for example, but for specific documents or parts of these activities that are important. And then secondly, the teams seem to be having really good coordination, weekly meetings, you know, and I think those are an opportunity for ABA and search to flag additional things that we might not know from the beginning that we want to be consulted on or have an input in. And then, you know, that would be up to us to say, oh, wait, you're like doing this invitation letter to that person. No, I want to look at it because for whatever reason, it's important. And I think, you know, our teams would be able to flag those issues when they come up. As long as like, you know, we continue with the good regular engagement that the teams have had.
Okay, well, I think if we want to kind of decide that moving forward, we will send the documents that we've decided in the work plan that need to be reviewed by everyone to both organizations. You have that opportunity to provide your input, and then we consider your input as, you know, the lead on the project, and then we finalize the document if we're responsible for that document.
Here is the comment from Mokru.
Uh-huh.
Firstly, we discuss all our CIPE decision with ABA at the country level and come to common vision, and then we put it into the regional agenda to discuss. So what are your comments on it?
It's same for Kazakhstan.
Maybe based on the suggestion that Search and ABA indicated, we can keep you informed and you can keep us informed about your activities during the bi-weekly meetings online that we have each Monday.
Sometimes it takes yeah, here. I think we should do some sort of simplification, because when we do it in the country level, it takes like a week, like 3-4 days to consult with ABA Search, and then we go to the regional level, then we go to DC level. Maybe we should simplify it, and we'll do it at the same time. I think we do something, we want to consult with everybody, we will send everybody in country level and regional and DC. Yeah? It would be easier because, for example, while I was drafting the PPT, it was consulted with our team, then Search and ABA, then regional, then DC, and all the time the changes are made on the PPT, and finally when somebody asks where did we take this information, actually this information didn't exist. It was changed a lot, and it's already totally different can be information from I took from the proposal. So it would be good to have maybe we will not in this mode as Mohru wrote, but maybe we will consult it at the same time with everybody. That would be easier. How do you think on it?
But what I see now, so everyone want to be informed only about the final document, final result. So I think it's enough maybe during the bi-weekly Monday meetings just to keep informed what is done, and there is no need maybe to ask for the inputs of everyone if no one wants to spend time for this review and for the approving process. So maybe Search, we will prepare their updates and for these meetings, and the same if ABA and CIPE.
Does that make sense to everyone? If we use the bi-weekly meetings to update you on what is being done in the next week or 2 weeks, and then you will use that opportunity to say, okay, you're doing this, I need to see that document, but like on principle, you will not see every document unless you request it. Does that make sense?
So in case of the search, for example, I'm trying to participate in all the meetings with all the countries, the team countries, for example, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan. And when I was approving the selected organization, it was kind of a little bit different because I didn't know what kind of organizations and etc. But in the future, for example, when I will detailedly, for example, prepare the content of the media campaign, and I will prepare the final one, for example, should I prepare the before or after that? What if I understand you correct? For example, in the media Monday events, we will talk about the future upcoming events or the past ones. I mean, okay. So it's the final ones. We will, okay.
Like Mokru has a suggestion. Is it also reasonable to have one tracking document to put there all issue needs to be considered and confirmed from all parties?
Yes, it was indicated in the project proposal, and that's why we were asking everyone to be involved in each process. And for example, if we are doing a PPT, a voice of everyone is included, and we have the final document to agree with this. Of course, yes. Yes, I agree with Mohro. Yes, we discussed it because it was indicated in the proposal that everyone needs to be involved equally in this process.
So let's just finish up this discussion. Did we come to a consensus about how we're moving forward? Yeah, so the bi-weekly meetings will be used to bring up any issues or any specific moments that you would like to be involved in the approval process for or the development process for. But for all the activities based on the work plan, CIPE, ABA, or Search will take the lead on the development of those things, and the other organizations will be involved as they express it in those meetings.
Sorry to clarify, for example, establishing a steering committee, and it is written that CIPE is leading this process and taking response. Does it mean, I said that ABA will not join in the discussion who will be in the steering committee? Of course, we are planning to, not our consortium will decide who will be there. The consortium will, not consortium, coalition will decide who will be there anyway, but the finalizing list will be done by the wage project. So does it mean that ABA will not involve in this process? You just need the final approved list, right?
Yes, Cecilia, the question was not about involvement. The question was about approval. So we will be involved in all process anyway. We have to, I mean, we have interest, but for me, for example, as a lawyer, approval means other thing, like maybe we have different meanings about the approval process, okay? But we are happy to be involved. For example, our MOU, ABA is supposed to develop MOU, but we of course will send the first draft to all organizations to get your feedback and other things. And after we receive your recommendations, we will finalize and again send you the final version. So, I mean, does it mean that you will have to approve it or not? I mean, this is just maybe the. Yes. No, you've been waiting for our approval, like. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm.
Yes, and for the selection of steering committee members, I guess we all should be involved in this and just agree on each nomination. Or
Mohru just asked, what if ABA does not approve some of CIPE's decisions that are critical for CIPE? For example, if CIPE takes a decision and then ABA says, well, no, we don't agree, then what? After we already started to implement it.
let's guess, for example.
Yeah, Barb or Mohru, please. Yeah.
Sure, and oh, Mohru, go ahead.
No, thanks, Barbara.
Sure, Mohru, I know we talked about this when we were in Uzbekistan a little bit as well. You know, I think walking through the work plan, you know, country by country, you know, like we're doing here, if there's any follow-up discussions, I think that would be great because it starts to outline who's responsible for what and where those approvals and final decisions lie. And then if there is anything that is of contention, you still have, you can bring it to a cell and to the ABA, for example, and search regional coordinators that are responsible for the project. You can bring it to Kalea or to the DC level, essentially, to try to sort through things. You know, oftentimes I think it's probably just you know, a misunderstanding or a differing expectation. Kind of like what Asel mentioned. I really appreciated your comment, Asel, when you said approval for a lawyer means something, you know, perhaps different than for the rest of us. So that's helpful to remind ourselves. So I would say, you know, if you find that you ever have a point of disagreement or confusion in working together at the country level, you know, take it to the regional coordinator level first. And if it can't be ironed out there, then bring it to the DC team. And we'll try to help you work through all of that. You know, I think with CIPE having this be our sort of project model and the experience that we bring to the table in terms of how this works and the impact it has, I think a lot of the decisions do lie with us, but we have to be very cognizant and respectful of the fact that, you know, while we are in this consortium with ABA and with Search and that we are consortium partners, their reputation is on the line just as much as ours is with our local partners, with the host government and what have you, that we are guests in these countries and trying to help. So ultimately, you know, I'm just saying that if you do find that you have an area of disagreement that you are having trouble sorting through, then take it to the regional level. And if that's not working either, then bring it to the DC level and we'll try to help you sort it out.
Thanks, Barb. Okay, so I think that what we discussed just now is really helpful. And I think that moving forward, we can agree that the biweekly meetings will be used to discuss any approach strategic issues that need to be discussed. And then for any of the activities where Search and ABA are consulted and informed, yeah, I think we just need to figure out the review process of the documents and whether yeah, I guess I'm not really sure. Did we come to a consensus about that? If people are going to review the documents or?
Yes, but Asher said that this is the process that we're already doing. And I don't know what we can change actually, because we are informing each other and we are waiting for the inputs of each other. And as you said, we finalize it and send for the final decision. Is it okay or not? If not sending, we are making our meetings. It is the process what we are having now. And if you have any other suggestion how to do it,
Yes, I have a suggestion. For example, if we have like term like in 2 days and there is no recommendations from ABA, it means that it's okay, like something like that. Okay.
So please search, let us know if it is ABA, you don't answer 2 days, it means no comments from search, right? No, it's the suggestion from the ABA. What's the way of communication with search will be?
Okay, and I think that's clear. And going forward, it sounds like each country level has its own way of working. And so if we need to somehow, have a structure somewhere like Kazakhstan, it works this way, Kyrgyzstan, it works this way, then we can do that as well. Okay, great. So I see that Yelena has joined us. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. 1 second, stop. Okay, and Yelena Ratoy, she is our program officer in Moldova. She is leading the implementation of the wage project in Moldova along with ABA Roli. So I've asked her to join us today to speak about her working, like CIPE's working relationship with ABA in Moldova and the experience implementing the project together, and also to share her experience working with business associations in Moldova who perhaps don't have a lot of time to commit to this process, and how she has been navigating that process in Moldova. And then also speaking about the gender-based violence component and how they're working on that in Moldova. So Yelena, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Kaleya. Can you hear me? That's fine. Okay. I'm sorry I cannot turn on my camera because I'm in the taxi now. I'm going to the office, but I'd like to greet you all. If to speak about our, in general, our strategy on how we coordinate things, initially, well, first of all, I think I have to start saying that besides CIPE and AB Roli, both CIPE and AB Roli in Moldova have 2 local partners who supported the implementation of the project. And all of us, for partners, we have our roles and our implications in each of activity. And in order to coordinate all the activities and to split the responsibilities, let's say, between us in organizing some events, for example, or implementation of other activities, we agreed to have local meetings on a regular basis. Initially, we were meeting more often, like, for example, at least once in a month. Now, when everything is set up more or less, we meet based on the needs, on a needs basis. And it's very useful to have these local meetings because we can share what has been done, what is planned to happen in the next, and how each partner will be involved in this. Also, we use this platform to strategize on implementation of the activities. Also, I'd like to say that we also have monthly meetings with our DC colleagues where we update each other on the implemented activities. Again, as a tool of coordination, we use emails, meaning when, for example, CIPE plans to organize an event or to start implementation of an activity envisaged in the work plan, we send to our local partners emails with updates about the process, about at what stage we are, and this is very, very useful for us because in this case, everyone can be on the same track, meaning everyone can be informed about all the processes. Also, if to speak about the involvement of the US Embassy in Moldova in the okay, not involvement, but information, informing US Embassy in Moldova about project activities. In the spring, we had a meeting with the representatives of US embassies about the project, and we informed them about the upcoming activities, so what are the next steps of the project. During this meeting, it was agreed that we will send regular meetings to the embassy about the implementation of the project. And we are doing this. Also, we keep inviting the US Embassy representatives to all our events. Some events they can attend, some events they cannot attend, meaning it depends on the availability. But from our side, we inform them about everything we organize in the project. If to speak about the integration of gender-based violence and women's economic empowerment, I'd like to mention that in the project implemented in the Republic of Moldova, we work with both business associations and civil society organizations. We selected 10 of them in total, and out of these 10 organizations, we have four associations working with reducing of gender-based violence, elimination of gender-based violence. In the process of capacity building, supporting the organizational development of these organizations, we, by increasing their internal capacities, we aim to help them to provide better services to women and girls victims of violence. Also, in our advocacy initiatives, which will be implemented by the Alliance, we are not, we didn't create it yet, the Alliance. We are at the initial stage of creation of the Alliance. But nevertheless, we started to speak about the potential priority areas which will serve as basis for advocacy initiatives supported by the Alliance. So in these priority areas, we were targeting victims of gender-based violence as well. For example, one of potential priority area which might be supported as advocacy initiative by the Alliance is the access to credits and to finance for women entrepreneurs and women potential entrepreneurs. And in this respect, we will target women victims of violence as potential entrepreneurs as well. Besides this, last week we had a very productive meetings with our colleagues at ABROLI and WAGE, and we were discussing more about how to better integrate gender-based violence in women's economic empowerment. We came with some ideas. We're still at the process of discussing these ideas, but as examples, we're thinking about organizing, raising awareness activities in regard to combating sexual violence at the workplace, or about the ILO Convention 190 on reducing violence and sexual harassment at the workplace. And also some capacity building activities for victims, women victims of domestic violence, in regards to increase their knowledge in the entrepreneurship field. If you have any other questions, I'm here to answer to all of them. Thank you, Kalea.
Thank you so much, Elena. That was really helpful. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about your cooperation with business associations, because I know that the Moldova team has had to come up with some creative solutions for giving small grants to business associations to ensure their support and in the process, or do you have a memorandum of understanding with those associations for the project?
Yes, in the project we are working with 4 business associations and 6 civil society organizations. Unfortunately, in Moldova, we don't have a lot of women's business associations. That's why we had to involve in our project mainstream business associations as well, but who have a big share either of women members or who work in the field which is covered mostly by women. For example, we work with the Association of Light Industry, and up to 90% of representatives of these associations are women, because mostly women work in these fields. Initially, when we started our involvement of associations, both business associations, but also civil society organizations in our project, we developed a memorandum of understanding with them about their participation in the capacity building program. Because initially we started with the capacity building program, we had the memorandum only about this component. And they signed this memorandum, committing themselves to participate to all the events and to be available for the mentorship sessions, for the trainings, and so on. And indeed, as a part of capacity building program, we, besides trainings and mentorship sessions, we provided to all partners small grants to support their organizational development. And we provided these grants not only to business associations, but also to our civil society organizations. And each partner, each associations decided on their own on how, what kind of activities they want to implement in order to support their organizational development. For example, some of them use these grants for development of strategic plans or for improving their communication, like developing a website and so on. When it comes to business associations specifically, most of them, or one of the main problems faced by all of them is the membership. So some of these grants went to supporting business associations to grow their membership, to initiate and undertake recruiting campaigns of new members. And I wanted to point out that meaning these grants, they are very small indeed, and they allowed the implementation of small activities, but nevertheless, we allowed to our partners to budget a very small amount of money to cover some of their wages, like a financial support for them to implement these small grants. Like it's up to $200 or something like this, meaning a very, very small amount they were able to use for their salaries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yelena. Barb, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else to the Moldova experience that would be helpful for our Central Asia colleagues to know. Does anyone have any questions for Yelena about the gender-based violence component and how they're approaching it, or working with the US Embassy or anything else she said? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Yelena, and we will be in touch in case any other questions come up. I know that our projects are similar in that they're both funded by wage, but they are also different in terms of the scope. So thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you.
Yelena.
We have 10 more minutes. Sorry, I keep forgetting to put in the microphone. So we have 10 more minutes in this session. Are there any other questions we have before we close?
Well, guys, it would be good to close this session now in order to get prepared for the next meeting. We need to run to the office, actually. Yeah. Oh, or if you just continue, we just leave.
No, from the office, yeah.
For the next online meeting, I mean. Okay, we can do it here.
Like
From here.
from here. Okay.
Okay. We can do that.
Мне все равно надо приобрести CIPE, тоже достану свой компьютер.
Okay. Я вот сейчас EBRD.
Okay, so we're gonna close the session. Actually, I'll let anyone from the online participants. Do you have any final questions or thoughts you want to share?
Thank you very much. Not at the moment. It was very helpful for us. And good luck for your next meetings and activities.
So important.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Mokru. Thanks everyone for your participation. I think this session was really helpful. And yeah, we will continue it as we move forward in implementation. So now many of us are participating in the EBRD meeting to present the project. So we'll move on to that and close this session. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.